Chairman, we're now live.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone present in the chamber and those listening online to the business of the Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Alex Hall and I am the Chairman of this committee. Councillor Richard White, Vice Chairman of this committee, is also in attendance. Can I remind you that the audio visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcasted live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception and assemble in the front car park and await further instructions. Can I request everyone present to ensure your mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent for the duration of this meeting? May I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by Councillor White. I will ensure that everyone has the opportunity to ask questions and make contributions. I would appreciate contributions to be succinct and concise, and also that you indicate early when you wish to speak. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Apologies for absent. Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillors Stokes and Rawlings.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of members' interest. Does anybody have any interest to declare?
Which item is it? Can I do it at the time?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Was it item 5?
Yes, Chairman. Could you declare an interest in item 5? Although it's not a direct pecuniary interest, there is transactions between LCC and NKDC, which I think are sufficient enough for me to abstain from the discussion and abstain from the vote.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll start the official agenda. There is just going to be a slight change. We're moving item 8 up the agenda to start with. So we'll be starting with item 8, the Highways Major Project Update. The scrutiny report is on pages 67 to 80 and provides an update on progress of the Highways Major Projects. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. So the approval of the minutes. So I move that the committee supports the proposed minutes. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. So now we'll move on to announcements. I'm so sorry. Okay, sorry. We have one pre-decision item to consider and a lighter agenda today. However, I should still like to stress the importance of taking reports as read, and I ask that our presenters summarise the key points and the type of input expected by the committee. Introductions of reports will be ideally around 5 minutes, so we have time to consider and debate. Do we have any announcements by Councillor Richard Davis?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see everybody. No announcements this morning.
Okay, thank you. Are there any announcements by senior officers?
Good morning, Chair. No announcements.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So we will finally move on to the official agenda, item 8. The scrutiny report is on pages 67 to 80 and provides an update on progress of the Highways Major Projects. The actions required by us is asked that we consider and comment on the detail contained in the report and recommend any actions to the Executive Member for Highways, Transport and IT. The report will be presented by Sam Edwards, Head of Highways, Infrastructure and Laboratory Services. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and morning all, and appreciate you moving the agenda around to accommodate me. So I'll do as I normally do on the major works, as I've added a lot of pictures in and some text to the progress of all the majors, and I'll just run through and explain where we're at with each of them. So starting on pack number page 67, so Grantham Southern Relief Road. So the main focus has continued on the what we call the RFC works. So that's the reinforced concrete works to the eastern embankment. So you can see that at the top of page 68. So that's the additional 2 piers. So the 2 nearest sort of concrete structures is the additional 2 piers, and then one furthest away is the abutment where the bridge will land. If you remember, we extended the bridge by about 70 metres, and that effectively, those 2 spans between the 3 concrete members, that is the additional extensions, 70 metres through there. So we're busily, as you can see, 2 cranes, lots of reinforcement works, which I'll come on to later. There's a lot of construction work taking place there. Towards the bottom of page 68, it's really just an indication that this is the first section of the bridge that we're still working on fabricating. So that'll get pushed later on across the East Coast Main Line and across the Witham Valley. Running to the top of page 69, that's the abutment that you can see further away. That's the most eastern part of the bridge, and that's where the bridge will land. So they've completed the foundations that sit underneath that, significant foundations that I've sort of provided text for previous. The abutment that's built through there and the reinforcement that's being tied at the moment, that's what's called the wing walls. And then running up the vertical ones will be the parts that the actual beams will sit on. Just the last picture, so towards sort of middle of page 69, that's just a view of the piers that are already in place. So this is the original piers for the bridge. The sort of sectional cross the square areas around it, those are temporary works. They're colloquially known as flying carpets, and they're temporary. And you can see the beams that go above the piers. That's what the bridge will actually be pushed against. So it will push over that as it reaches the other side towards the eastern side of the embankment. So works are, like I say, very much focused on completing the fabrication in readiness for launch, and the receiving side, so on the eastern side for the reinforced concrete. Moving on to North Icon Relief Road. Since the last update, we've secured planning permission, which is fantastic. We've also now secured, following the paper that came to this last scrutiny, the key decision approval to publish the side roads orders and the compulsory purchase orders. Those are pretty much ready to go. What we're just pending is the Section 6 agreement, which I outlined at the last meeting. There's just some final legal elements to go through, which hopefully resolved on Wednesday last week. So we're just putting that back to National Highways, hopefully for signing sometime this week. Then we can publish the orders. Once you make the orders, then you seal them, then you publish them over I think it's about 2 weeks. If everything goes as we plan it to, they'll get publicised and through the process, and if there's any objections, that will probably be around spring next year for a public inquiry. But everything for that scheme is going exactly the way we want to it, and in a good place. Spalding Western Relief Road. I thought as we're coming towards the end of the project, we are due to finish the project around September-ish, depending on how progress goes, with the final works around 2-plank bridge and some elements going into October. But as we're getting towards the end, I thought I'd do something slightly different and go through some of the engineering difficulties of why we get a few comments as why is it taking so long to deliver. So I thought I'd go through the embankment construction and the complexity in that. So I've got a series of pictures here that explain how we built it over the period of time. So the picture on page 70, that is all the piles that went in. So this is nothing to do with the bridge. This is the piles that went in to support the embankment that will lead up to the bridge. As many will know, the ground conditions around Spalding are so poor that if you put too much weight, it just pushes the virgin ground away, and you actually need to stabilise it as well as reducing the load going down. So what you've got there, it's a little difficult to see, but those are 250 mil square concrete piles. They go 20 to 25 metres deep. There's over 800 on either side, so there's 1,666 piles that went in just to support the embankment. After those are constructed towards the top of page 71, after that, once the piers are constructed, they, want of a better word, they nibble the top of the concrete off to expose the rebar, the reinforcement, and then you construct what's called a pile cap. So it's effectively a way of distributing the loads across the whole platform. So what you can see, the picture there is in the distance on that top picture. that's where the pile caps are being constructed, and in the former, that's where they're setting the cages in place to pour the concrete around it, which again has to be done for 1,666 individual pile caps. And then the next picture towards the bottom of page 71 shows the waterproofing. It's sort of the black piers, so they get painted so it's waterproofed, and then you infill between the pile caps, which provides that distribution of loads. And then the top of page 72 gives sort of a completed view of that over the top of the pile cap. So you've got that base layer before you start building the embankment up. And again, that's both sides of the bridge. Bottom of page 72, you can start to see the actual piles that went in this. So in the middle, that's the actual bridge abutment foundations. Just to the right, you can see the embankment foundations. The piers or the piles that went in for the bridge abutment is even larger than the ones for the embankment, and again they go about 40 to 45 metres deep. And then at the top of page 73, you can see that the abutments have come up out of the ground as we've constructed, and you've got the two piers being constructed in between. And then the next picture is when we landed the beams on the weekend of Storm Babette, I think it was. Thankfully, it didn't hit the Spalding area too badly, so we got the beams in. Towards the top of page 74, this is now the construction of the embankment. So again, we talked about we've now stabilised the ground, but because the load is so great, we've gone for a vertical wall, because if you go for a sloped embankment, there's more weight, there's more fill pushing down on the ground. So it's a vertical wall, and that black infill is what's called a lightweight. It's an extruded clay, a bit like pumice stone. So it's a really light, so again, you're not pushing too much. So if you think you've got 1,666 piles, a lightweight fill, and you're reducing the scale just so we don't have the deformation that you do in the ground around there. And then the bottom of page 74 is about where we're at now. So the bridge is in, the embankments are in, the wall's up, we're waterproofing the bridge at the moment, and we're focusing on the junction in the distance in the top right of that picture on the bottom of 74, which is what's called junction H, and the signal's going in. So it's really getting towards the end of the final works for finish in the next couple of months. So moving on to some of the levelling up projects. So focusing on the two main ones now. So Springfield Road Roundabout. Pops in some pictures. Generally, not a huge amount to update other than the job's going really well. It's going as per programme. We've been working on the 4 quadrants, working primarily on the northwest quadrant at the moment, but also on the eastern leg, the north side of the eastern leg, and there's a culvert that runs through that was quite complex to construct. And I just thought I'd put in the second picture on there that shows whoever built the roundabout in the first place put a culvert right in the middle of the roundabout with an exposed drain, which is somewhat difficult to work around, which is some of the challenges in delivering it when you've got an exposed and you're trying to change the shape of it and things like that. So it restricted some of our working areas, which is why it's taken longer than some people might think it should take. But we are getting towards the end of the project in the next few months. And then moving on to the one that we've started since then. We started, I think it's around May, June time. We've currently got an 8-week closure on the side road on the 1180. And you can see in the bottom of that picture on page 76, in fact, the digger at the bottom of it is the widening of the A16 as it runs through there. You know, the roundabout will be about twice the size that it is now, and you get a feel for where the excavator is and it's digging, how much bigger this roundabout's going to be when it's finished. And that closure on the 1180 that I mentioned, that's on now. We've been on for a couple of weeks now, so we've got another sort of 5 or 6 weeks to completion, and that will also widen that leg on the 1180 as well. But things are going well for a planned completion, sort of at the early part of next year. And then just finally, we've done half of the Spalding Active Travel Scheme. We've got the other half that we're looking to start, I think it's around September, early September. We're just getting final designs done, and we're adding those to the green cell contract with Brahini doing the works. Moving on to Grantham Future High Street Fund. We're nearing the end of that project now. This is the project on behalf of South Kesteven District Council. The couple of pictures there shows when we've effectively planed off the existing servicing, and there's a lot of drainage works and manhole repairs to do in there as well. And then the picture at the top of page 78 shows some of the blocks that are being laid. It's obviously a lot further on than when I put this report together. We're nearing the end of that in the next few weeks, or into August. but effectively lifts the road to the same level as the footways, so that the marketplace can hold events at the same sort of level. So otherwise, there's lots of issues and safety issues there. And the State Approach project, at the end of last week, South Coast Stevenage District Council gave the okay to place those orders with the same contractor, and we're just in the process this morning of agreeing those orders for starting in August, which will be the traffic management will be closely aligned with not only the marketplace that's soon to be finished, but there's also a major resurfacing scheme on Dysart Road that we're coordinating the traffic management in with that as well. Sinsel Bank, not a huge amount to say here, other than that we've got the prices back. We've been out to tender. We're comfortable with the prices and the programme. We're just going through the details to agree that for a hopeful start in August. It may push back a little bit just because of the discussions we're having, but we're almost there now. So that will probably start towards the end of August, possibly into September. Netland Road Roundabout is one of those sort of newer schemes we're looking at. The detailed design is not far off. We're almost there for the roundabout. But there's the footbridge to add into that process as well, which will require planning permission and land take. We're in those discussions at the moment. What is worth saying is that a lot of the funding that was earmarked for this was to come from the devolution deal. That's currently uncertain at this stage, but we're continuing the scheme to a point where we can pause, so there's no abortive costs. But their funding streams need to be sort of looked into, whether that's devolution or not. So there's a slight uncertainty, but we're getting as officers to the scheme to the point where it can be picked up at a later stage or continued through. Almost there. Roman Bank Coastal Carriage. This is another one that was to be funded by devolution. The decision was to continue with the scheme as a political priority, so this is continuing. And I think we're out to tender now, and we're due to start in September, depending on prices when they come back. And then the Coastal Footway, Cycleway, we've done an initial assessment. That's now gone through to Balfour Beatty through a design and build to do an initial feasibility to understand costs around the deliverability. So there's no commitment to deliver the scheme any further than that, just to get an understanding of what those costs are. So I think that draws the report to an end. So I'll pause there and ask for any questions.
Thank you, Sam. Do you have any speakers? Councillor Rushton.
Thank you. A couple of bits from me. One, just picking up on the second of your roundabout, the Green Shell roundabout at Spalding. What feedback have we had from the local communities, appreciating that we've had a bit of time now with that access road to the industrial estate being closed off, and appreciating that traffic is having to reroute through Pinchbeck and potentially either Surfleet or Spalding? Thank you.
Generally, nothing too horrendous. I spoke to a number of large-scale businesses in the area prior to that, a lot of the distribution business, and I've spoken to them a couple of times since it's gone in place. I expressed that normally the first week is pretty bad, where people get used to it, but let the first week go, and it will generally calm down. The perception is usually worse than the reality, and they completely agree with that. Is that actually, yes, there is some disruption for that, and we've never hidden away from that. That was always going to be a reality, but the impact has been relatively low, and I've had very few complaints or concerns come through to me, and usually the public are not too shy in sort of raising their concerns, and we've had very little. So I think generally it's going well, and ultimately we can't do the works without closing it. But what we have done is we've minimised that period to just 8 weeks rather than the whole duration, and we've got double the amount of resources in there working to minimise that as much as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Strangle.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Sam, for an excellent presentation. The only thing that's missing, and I do apologise in advance for asking this, it's dear to my heart, obviously, co-located in my patch, which is the Western Growth Corridor. And in item 8, it says Highways Major Project Update. Now, the one thing that's going ahead in the Western Growth Corridor area is this bridge installation and the spine road. So I wouldn't have minded seeing something in there just to give us an update on where we're going. Not for this meeting, obviously, but in the future. When it comes to major projects, I mean, that is one of the biggest. So just with your indulgence, Chairman, I'd like to put that in. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm happy to put a short section there. The reason I say short is it's just for everyone's clarity, it's not a project that the County Council is delivering. It is a project that the City of Lincoln is delivering. We have an involvement as far as as a highway authority, like any other effectively developer or third-party works that take place. So I can give an update based on what we know, but we won't be able to go into the nitty-gritty because we're not exposed to that, because it is their project that they're delivering, not the County Council.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. And just one more from me, picking up on page 69, the Northern Icon Relief Road. Does the team have any indication whether the announcements that are expected today around major transport project funding, whether they will impact on any of the ambitions that we might have here in Lincolnshire in the short or medium term?
So that was a question I was expecting from the announcement this morning. I suppose the simple answer is no. We've got no more information than anyone else has than what's been announced today. However, what we did receive on Thursday from the DFT is a further allocation of the £110 million of £6.5 million allocation for this financial year, which does stipulate that the Minister has agreed to fund that going forward. Now, whether there's a disconnection, I'm not sure, but it seems somewhat odd to write to the authority formally on the Thursday and then do something more severe the following week. So I know no more than that, but all the indications are there's been no conversations about the axing of the scheme. The scheme funding works about 0.5% of the announced deficit. And what I would say is this scheme unlocks a significant amount of housing, which is also a key priority for the new government. So I don't know anything more, but everything I'm hearing formally wouldn't suggest that the scheme is about to be something severe happen to it. But I know no more than you do, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. On Sinsel Bank, Sam, don't worry, it's not going to be about cycle path. Could you tell me how you consulted with the residents, bearing in mind, I believe at the last count there's 40 different languages spoke down there.
So there's been two public engagement events as part of the actual scheme that I'm presenting here. There was one, and I can't remember the dates, I'm afraid, off the top of my head, but it was definitely last year in relation to the actual physical works we're doing. There was a further engagement which the City of Lincoln led about what's the second part of the schemes, the gateways and greenings. So that's to do with gateway features, totems, some rain gardens, suds and things like that. So that was held at the football club, which was, and part of that, I'm afraid I don't know the details, but both the comms and engagement team were involved in that, and they take consideration of different languages and so forth. And we take those sort of, if there's uncertainty away, then we can answer that afterwards. As part of not necessarily this scheme I'm talking about here, there was the traffic regulatory order that came to Planning and Res Committee about the changes for one-way system that was approved. As part of that, that goes through the statutory engagement and consultation process, so that followed that. As did the parking arrangements as well. So there's been there's been a large amount of engagement as part of this that we've done jointly with the city and the county.
Thank you. And thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I move that the committee endorse this report and that our satisfaction be recorded in relation to progress updates and assurances provided. And I ask that comments raised by this committee be shared with leading officers and the executive member for their information. Does anyone dissent? If so, please indicate now. Thank you, that is agreed. Moving on to the next item, the Highways Depot Strategy, Sturton, Bystow and Sleaford. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found on pages 17 to 54 of the agenda. This report presents an overview of the Highways Depot strategy and outlines the initial phase, which includes the proposed relocation of the Sturton Bystow Highways Depot and the acquisition of land for an authority-owned depot in Sleaford. The report seeks approval from the Leader of the Council, Executive Councillor for Resources and Communications, and commissioning and the Executive Councillor for People Management, Legal, Corporate, Property and Complaints for the proposals, and to proceed with the land purchase for establishing 2 highway depots at Sleaford and Sturton-by-Stow. The decision is due to be taken between the 5th and the 9th of August 2024. In terms of actions, it is asked that we consider the report and determine whether we support recommendations to the Executive Councillors, and that we agree any additional comments to be passed on to the Executive Councillors in relation to this item. The report will be presented by Tom Guilford, the Client and Contract Management. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I could perhaps start with some background information which is found on page 21 of the report. This is part of a longer term development between LCC Highways and LCC Corporate Property Team to look at the overall delivery of highways across the county. This report deals with 2 of our depot locations, and there'll be further reports coming in due course as the project moves forward. So as previously stated, the relocation of the Sturton-by-Stow depot to potentially a new site within a similar locality to avoid increasing maintenance costs and provide more operational capacity in terms of delivery of winter salt and wider operational delivery, and to look at procuring land in the Sleaford area, which will provide long-term security for service delivery and potentially relocate LCC staff who are currently in NKDC leased offices onto this newly purchased site. Further reports will then come forward to the committee to look in detail at the Thirlby Highways depot to see what the best operational route for delivery in that area will be, potentially with disposal of Thirlby as a highways depot and a movement for those operations into Podhole and Ancaster depots. A review of Manby depot, which at the moment is a really large site. The plan is to look at sale of land and buildings and moving into another part of the site with a new salt barn and a smaller office accommodation. And then finally we'll review the Ancaster Highways depot, which at the moment is in an existing lease that expires in 2032, and there is a potential to purchase that lease outright and own the site and determine how we want to move forward. If I just go into detail a bit about Sturton-by-Stow depot, it's one of our 8 operational highways depots. We run a fleet of 7 gritters from there, and the Balfour BT term maintenance contractor run a number of gangs covering the northern area of the county. It's our main depot for that north area, so we run both reactive gangs dealing mainly with potholes as well as capital gangs from that location. Over recent years, a number of concerns have been raised about the condition of the depot. The office accommodation is very, very dated. The layout of the operational areas is really limited, and there are no current accessible facilities for any potential disabled members of staff. We currently have been looking at what the opportunity is to develop the site or move to a new site, and what purchase of a new site might mean. In terms of Sleaford, we have LCC staff working from NKDC, as I mentioned. Balfour BT currently rent a site on Pride Park Way, which is privately rented by them to a private owner. What we'd like to do is purchase that site, and that would effectively alleviate the need for our term maintenance contractor to lease a site, and it'll give us security in the long term for operations in that area. The report goes on to detail the potential costs for both Sturton and Sleaford. Sturton costs are significant and are detailed on page 23. It's likely that the purchase of a potential site, we've done quite a bit of work investigating an area at Saxelby Enterprise Park to understand what an operational capacity might look like. We're advised that purchase price of around 2.5 to 3 million will be there. A purchase price of 650,000, but a construction price of 2.5 to 3 million to build a salt barn, a depot, as well as an office facility there, bringing the total for the site to around 3.15 million to 3.6 million. We do, of course, have the ability to sell the land that we own at the current Sturton-by-Stow site. It is now surrounded by houses. As the village has expanded, it has expanded around our depot. So we are something of a nuisance to our neighbours. But it does mean that the land is valuable and should release something in the region of 350 to 450,000 pounds should we sell it. The current site requires a significant amount of investment to bring it up to standard. A new roof, damp treatment, the windows are insecure, and there's a number of structural issues that are required to be repaired, currently estimated at around £500,000. But also a new salt barn will be required because it's reached the end of its operational life and is now structurally becoming unsound. That's likely to cost around £100,000, so that will also require investment. And if we were to bring the office standards up to what you might consider reasonable standard, which would include accessible toilets, etc., that could end up being £700,000 in total. So in terms of investment, that would require a capital purchase cost of around 3.3 million in total, but the resale of the existing site and the future capital investments required are likely to be 1.1 million. Therefore, a net capital cost of around 2.2 million would be needed to be secured to progress the project beyond initial land purchase. Budget for this has been identified as being feasible from the council capital programme, and that's identified in the resources comments as part of the report. Just to move on to the cost for Sleaford, this is slightly more straightforward because this becomes an obvious business case. As the term maintenance contractor are currently paying for a lease to a private entity, and we are currently leasing depot space from NKDC. If we were to purchase and own the land, both of those lease costs would be released. That would allow a £59,000 saving to be made. So with a capital cost of around 375,000 plus a build cost of around 100,000 to make sure the offices are in place to get all the staff on site, this would equate to a payback period of around 8 years. So it becomes a much more straightforward business case. We did look at the options of not purchasing the land and not improving the site. Operationally, Sturton will suffer significantly. There is a health and safety risk. The site is very constrained, and the people and plant interface between trying to move around the site with equipment is significant. A further impact due to the constrained size of Sturton is that the salt barn only contains 1,500 tonnes of salt. Most of our other salt barns contain 4,500 tonnes. This means that we have to undertake a mid-season restock during the winter season, and of course salt in the winter is more expensive than it is in the summer, so that adds another £20,000 of salt cost in that could be avoided. So all in all, we'd like to take the comments from the committee and ask that we can move forward to approach the executive for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. On Sturton, it said land searches have commenced over the last 12 months. What is the period between actually securing a new site, and then do we have to build it before obviously we can get rid of Sturton? So how long will that all take? And have you taken into consideration that one of the things you said about Sturton was residents? Will the new site have the same effect? You know, will it be near residents? You know what I mean? Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah. So just to pick up on the resident point, the land that we looked at in Saxelby is on Saxelby Enterprise Park, which is the other side of the river from Saxelby Village. So it's well away from any of the development at the moment. In terms of a build time, obviously we haven't done any further work on understanding what the detail of the project would look like. But yes, we would certainly look to have a site ready to go into as soon as we could. But we would need to maintain our operational presence from the old depot until the new one was ready.
Thank you. Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your report. That was really thorough and really interesting. It seems to me that this is a move that is very much needed for Sturton, and I just don't feel that the existing site is fit for purpose. So with that in mind, it seems a totally sensible solution, as you say, sort of the budget savings that you're going to make. And in particular, the thing that stands out to me is it not meeting accessibility standards. We obviously have a duty under the Equalities Act, and I think that's really, really key. So yeah, I'm happy to support both of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Councillor Mike Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, looking at this, Sturton by Stow is certainly in need of some changes, and I think probably the relocation is the best thing to be doing. It looks as though it's going to take quite a lot to refurbish the site and bring it up to standard. It's still going to be difficult to move around that site, I would imagine, and we're going to need a larger salt barn. So I think it seems to me as though we're outgrowing that site with the way we're going. So it makes perfect sense to relocate to a new site. And I would think even if we stayed at the old site at Sturton by Stow, the maintenance costs, we would still have more ongoing maintenance costs than we would have on a new site. So it's certainly got my support, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I move that the committee supports the proposed recommendations as these are set out on pages 19 to 20 of the report, and I ask that comments raised by this committee be shared with the Executive Councils for their consideration ahead of the decision being made between the 5th and the 9th of August 2024. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Vernon. We will now vote. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, one abstention. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, the Transport Q4 Performance Report 2023-24. This scrutiny report can be found on pages 55 to 60 of the agenda pack. The purpose of this report is to provide the committee with a summary of performance for Q4 in relation to the Council's transport services, encompassing local bus services and educational travel. In terms of our actions, it is requested that we consider and comment on the detail of the report and recommend any changes or actions to the Executive Member for Highways, Transport and IT. Helen Reek, the Support Services Manager, is here to present the report. So over to you, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so presenting the quarterly monitoring report of transport services, which encompasses both education, travel and local bus services. As you've said previously, take the report as read, so I'm just going to highlight a few key points. Future presentation will be introducing key performance indicators into the report for 24-25. Just doing paragraph 1.1 on overview of Lincolnshire's passenger transport, a couple of key points. Whilst driver shortages has become less of an issue, than we reported previously. Bus operators are now telling us they're having difficulty in recruiting technical staff to maintain and service vehicles. So there's a shortage of those in the market. Fuel prices have remained relatively stable. There's been a slight increase, but not as much as predicted. Just in terms of our approved list of operators, we've no new bus operators to the market, but we're getting a regular stream of taxi additions in various areas, including Peterborough, Doncaster, Newark, and so on and so forth. And as a service, we've now reached our summer peak for preparations with both the eligibility and operations team. We're working at full capacity over the summer months, and you see some of the stats for some of the new applications for transport that we've processed since parents found out what schools their children were going to. And it can also support the fieldwork team are going out doing all the checks on where pupils get picked up and dropped off, suitable walking routes and so on and so forth. So we don't get any respite just since March up till sort of like the end of September. So we're at full capacity with some new staff who've started recently. I can also, moving on to local bus issues, I can confirm that this committee's previously considered the bus service improvement plan for Lincolnshire County Council. That was duly submitted to the Department for Transport on the 12th of June, and grant funding was released for 24-25. So that we've also got permission from the DFT to utilise that funding for both capital and revenue spend, and as you can see in the report, that means our current programme of bus interventions has been implemented as set out in paragraph 1.2.2, and we've also got the opportunity then to roll out our real-time information and improvements to bus infrastructure as previously reported to this committee are on target to be implemented during the year. Okay, so we produced a press release from Councillor Davis on the 10th of July, giving you some initial indication of passenger growth in the market towns of where we've improved the bus services. Some have only been introduced recently, so it's early to say, but you can see some of the stats from Gainsborough, Lincoln and Grantham, showing an steady increase in passenger numbers. And in October, we have an annual public transport update, and we'll be able to provide more focus on the impact of the BSIP interventions for you to consider in more detail. Okay. Just to say that the only other thing I was going to add at this point was that because of the recent successes of our bus service improvement plan, we're receiving a number of requests for us to look from councillors to look at bus service provision across the county. So we're just asking local councillors, when you put the request in, if you can if you could provide detail on the ask coming from residents in your area, ideally understanding of what frequency is required and what need it would serve, etc., etc. So the more information you can give us up front, and then it gives us a chance to duly consider that. Just to finish off, then the continued pressure with the cost of the education travel budget. That's a national problem, as we've reported recently. We're in a benchmarking group with other large county councils, and they're all going through the same issue with the rising costs above inflation of SEN children and alternative provision. So happy to answer any questions. Like I say, we'll be doing a more focused report on local bus interventions at the October committee, and hand back to you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your report. That was very useful. I just wanted to mention a couple of points. So the £2 adult single fare cap on Call Connect has certainly been really, really popular within our villages. I was actually at a party, unbelievably, and people were talking about it over the barbecue. So, yeah, that's been massively successful, and I think is a brilliant, brilliant initiative. The other section I wanted to talk about, and I know that we've mentioned previously how useful it would be to have the comparable data from the quarter before, so thank you for including that in the report. I think it's actually more interesting to look at the quarter 4 22-23 as opposed to quarter 4 23-24 than last time, because it's obviously the same factors. In your report, you've mentioned the fact that the majority of the complaints that were fully upheld were down to admin errors. I just wondered whether we could understand, if you've got that level of detail, specifically what that was relating to. I know that you've mentioned sort of bus passes not being sent out and whatnot, but is that really sort of formal complaint level? Thank you.
Yes, we get all sorts of complaints via the MP, via local councillors and so on and so forth. We may well have posted it out, it may not have been received. So we look at that in great detail. We're always sharing lessons learned from all the complaints and how we can improve that. Sometimes the sheer volume of what we get and parents' expectations in an instant response generates complaints. Like if we have certain service standards for putting in school transport into place, some parents think we should be able to do it in about 24 hours. So we get all sorts and everything. But if you can see the trends, I think we're managing them quite well. When you look at, we transport 20,000 children every day, and the amount of complaints probably for that volume is, I think it's quite low, but that doesn't make us complacent by any means.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify with that absolutely sort of the number of complaints comparable to the number of children that we're transporting is not a high number at all. But it was just really to drill down on the level as to why, and sort of if it is all to do with sort of people not receiving bus passes or perhaps parental expectations of communication, is there any way that we can perhaps manage those expectations slightly better by giving ourselves, say, a 7 to 10 day turnaround rather than 3 days, which I don't know sort of what the expectation is, but perhaps could be worth looking at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Strangle.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Helen, for your report. Obviously, we had a conversation a little while ago about the problems with transport. I must say that the bus services in Birchwood are excellent. I really do. However, that's not without its problems. And the problem, as you well know, is there are 2 schools in the North Hykeham area, Robert Pat and North Kesteven secondary schools, and there is no bus service moving across. And how easy is it to try and get Stagecoach or whoever to actually go against their normal flow of operations? Do you have do you find obstacles in that, or is it fairly easy for them to say, yes, that looks like a reasonable request, etc.? Thank you.
We meet Stagecoach, and Stuart Eccles, my colleague, speaks to them probably very frequently. If there's a demand there, they'll put something in if they think there's funding for that. So it's just that age-old problem of, if they want to run it commercially, they've got to be sure there's a business case for it. And then the other option is we subsidise services, of which we're doing a lot through the BSIP as well. So I know that's a constant issue for you as a local county councillor, and we continue with those talks with Stagecoach.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for the report, Ellen. I agree with what Councillor Vernon said about people are saying good things about buses now with the £2. The other success is called Connect. Have you got any plans to grow this? Because this seems to be a really successful adventure, but the people that use it say that, yeah, it's good, it's an improvement on this bus service. The only problem is it doesn't run on Sundays, and there's a certain time when it cuts off. So can we look at running it later and actually on Sundays as well?
As far as I'm aware, there's no more plans at the moment in the budget for extended hours or Sundays, but I will feed that back to my colleagues that you've made that point.
Thank you. Do we have any further speakers? Councillor Mike Brooks.
Is that on? Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say a thank you, because as the BSIP money that has been made available, I've recently just managed to have a bus shelter replaced, a very dilapidated bus shelter replaced in my division, and when I raised the issue, it was dealt with really quickly, and there's a nice new bus shelter there within less than 6 weeks, and I think Stuart Eccles arranged that, and I say thank you very much, and it's nice to see that BSIP money is going to be used for things like improving the infrastructure that we've got and making things more passenger friendly. So thank you.
Thank you. Helen, did you want to come back on that?
No, you're absolutely right. We've managed to be able to do a lot of work on that bus infrastructure, so they've got the audit back, so we know what the state of every single shelter in Lincolnshire is like now. There's interim work going on. We're also working with local councillors and bus operators to look where we've got new services in place in some of the market towns where at least bus stop infrastructure is not marked. So we're looking at marking a lot of places up if people feel secure, if they know where to catch the bus, and so on and so forth. So it's really some really good news here about positive cleaning them, etc., 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 and dealing with them promptly through Fix My Street reports as well. So it's a really positive story. So thank you, Councillor Brooks.
Oh, right, okay. Nicole Hilton would like to speak online, so over to you, Nicole.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to come back on the comment that Councillor Clark had made about Call Connect. We are obviously incredibly proud of that service, but I think it's important to note that it isn't actually a rival bus service. It's for socially necessary transport when there isn't a commercial operator available to run that route. So it kind of fills the gaps and fills the holes. So we're really careful not to rival people like Stagecoach, people like PC coaches, etc., because we want the market in the bus companies to be vibrant, and what we don't want to do is sit over that. So we are looking at working with North and North East links and looking at a Call Connect without borders and expanding into their areas. But it is just worth noting that it's not quite transport of last resort, but it is for socially necessary when no other option is available. Obviously, what we would like is to encourage commercial operators to widen their network to get to a point where Call Connect wouldn't be necessary, but it's highly unlikely we'll ever get to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I would like to thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I move that the committee endorse the report and thank officers for the detailed contents and responses to questions provided. And I ask that comments, suggestions and recommendations be shared with the Executive Councillor for Highways, Transport and IT for his information and relevant officers in transport. Does anyone dissent? No, thank you. That is agreed. Moving on to the next item, highways, gully cleansing, drainage repair schemes and surface water flooding. This scrutiny report can be found on pages 61 to 66 of the agenda pack. This report outlines the reactive cyclic plans, components of highways drainage maintenance, including the response to low-level flooding. In terms of our actions, it is asked that we consider and comment on the detail contained in the update, consider and comment on the collaborative working across directorates and with partners, and that we recommend any changes or actions to the executive member for Highways, Transport and IT. The report will be presented by Richard Fenwick, County Highways Manager. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. This is a regular update report on our cyclic, reactive and planned highways drainage maintenance, which is brought to committee quarterly. So I just will take the report as read, but would like to update on some of the key parts of this time around. I had in the report update on the number of gullies and chambers that we've cleaned on our cyclic gully cleansing. So that is the tankers that on a cyclic basis go around the county and clean out the gully pots themselves. At the time of writing the report earlier in the month, the number was 21,781. Obviously, that's a moving picture, so checking in this morning, it's around the 28,000 mark. So in the time between writing the report and today, it has grown significantly. Overall, we have around 160,000 assets. Just to touch on something that isn't contained in the detail of the report, but for information, that drainage cleanse is done as per our Highways Infrastructure Asset Management Plan on a targeted basis. So most assets are cleaned annually. We do have some assets that, based on previous information around silt levels within them and the issues that we've had, are done every 2 years at the moment. At the moment, we don't have any done on cycle that are more frequently than once a year, but we are picking up certain assets more than once a year by using our reactive resources to pick up rather than put them through to the cycle, and we're cleaning the lines between gullies at the same time. We intend to use all of the information and some of the systems I'll come to talk on to improve the target around where we're going in more frequently, and where actually we're sending cyclic gully tankers out, and the gullies are effectively self-cleaning because of the velocities of water that they're designed to. So there's nothing actually being taken out of them when the gully tanker arrives. I've included just some screenshots in the report of a new system that we've brought in. In fact, Balfour Beatty and Flowline, who are our contractor and subcontractor for drainage maintenance, have provided that system themselves as part of a contribution to improving our service. You can see at a snapshot, again this was earlier in the month, the number of assets that have been cleaned, and whilst I can't do that within the report, you can click on those and see the full detail. One thing I was keen to include, which I've put a screenshot of, it's maybe not too easy to see in the actual report pack, but I'm happy to provide members with an actual look at this. I know members at previous update reports have commented that there's been frustrations from constituents around gully tankers being seen to attend and not clean out gullies. Often in the past we've had reasons given as to why that would happen, but now anything that cannot be cleaned on cycle, the gangs on site are required to take a photograph of each one to explain why. So we'll have a photograph of a car parked over it or a street that's parked out. They're all reviewed. Contractually they're required to go back at least once anyway if there's cars parked over, but it just allows us to have that assurance that they are attending and at least doing their best to do what we want them to do. Moving on to the reactive service, there was, I've spoken about at previous committees, there was an investment in £1.8 million extra resource towards reacting mainly. Some of that's gone towards cycle, but mainly reacting to issues. There's just some bullet points about what that looks like, but effectively we've got much more impressive resource, high power jetters with larger capacity, so it's 2 26-ton jetting machines that are out on the network now, and they're paired with civils crews, which are possibly meaning that the jobs are taking slightly longer in the first place, but rather than then identifying something that needs a dig down crew to come back 3 or 4 months later, it's all been done in the first visit. It's in its early days, but as you can see within the report, we've completed 303 jobs since the 1st of April. We completed around 800 jobs overall in 2023, so there has been a quickening of that. That being said, after Storm Henk and Babette, we've identified a lot more reactive works that are needed. We've issued 302 jobs since April alone in that same time. So whilst it's a fairly static number, there is a huge amount of work out there for our highway system. At the time of reporting, it was 1,012 jobs that we had in train. I did include a map just for visualisation of some of the tools we're using to manage that. It shows the distribution of jobs across the county. Again, happy to talk through outside of the committee if any members wanted to come to me for that. Moving on to planned maintenance, I've included a list for 2024-25 financial year of our planned schemes. You'll see in the scheme type that's divided up between drainage investigation, minor schemes and major schemes. For reference, a minor scheme tends to be around £20,000 to £50,000 worth of spend. A major scheme is £50,000 up to £200,000 or possibly beyond. It's the kind of scale of village-wide improvements that we're doing. There are some paper reports provided where I've separated them out after the report deadline, just by electoral division, if members are interested. It's the same list but filtered that way. This is information that any members through their local highways manager can request at any time, and we're keeping that list live through a combined system with our various teams. Those schemes are selected based on information from Cyclic Cleanse, where the teams are reporting back that there's broken connections, issues there, combined with reports of drainage and flooding issues, information from local members where there's local priorities that need sorting, and also working with the floods and water team to understand where Section 19 reports and internal flooding is confirmed. So we obviously prioritise those sites effectively based on a risk to life or property first, risk to external property second, and then we're looking at the extent of the flooding within the highway that might be caused as a third. Those reactive jobs are based in the same way, but the schemes tend to be the ones that couldn't be resolved reactively. So that is a whistle-stop tour of where we are as of now. I will come back to a future committee and explain how that picture is changing and what we're doing differently, but happy to accept any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any speakers? Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Genuinely welcome the report. I mean, notwithstanding everything that we're seeing and working through on the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee in the aftermath of Babet and Henk, it's good to see that this authority is doing its bit on our part of the network to reduce that risk in the future and going forward. And I'm pleased to see that the extra money that we put into this as a council is being well spent. I genuinely do welcome the fact if we're going out to do these jobs that we're equipping ourselves in a way that we do it once and we do it well in one visit rather than having to keep coming backwards and forwards. I'd be remiss of me, I'm grateful that you had a look at Dog Diet Road in my patch. It'd be remiss of me not to mention the A153 in the middle of Coningsby, because the next time it rains I'm sure I shall have a phone call from my predecessor, former councillor Mrs Harvey.
I can back in on that. Thank you for the comment, Councillor Ashton, and thank you for mentioning one of those situations. As per the list, there are a lot outstanding there, and one of the things that we want to work to improve with our partners is the time that any one site is waiting for works, which is around an average of 4-month wait at the moment from issue from the local highways team to completion on site, but there are some that are taking a lot longer. And the risk profile is constantly changing, unfortunately, with the other factors involved, from main rivers to ordinary watercourses to riparian issues, which is often predominantly the way that highway surface water gets away. Some of these can be more complicated and they can grow into larger schemes from what might seem a quite simple solution.
Thank you. Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you again for the report. That was, again, very interesting. And thank you, too, for the level of detail that you've provided on the schemes that are proposed. I think that's really useful to see, and I'll be contacting my highways manager for more information on my specific electoral division. We talk on page 62 about the vehicles that are blocking gullies. Is that still quite a big problem? Because I know that we've talked in the past at this committee about approaching parish councils and looking at different forms of informing residents that this is happening. Because at the end of the day, these are the people that are reporting the information to us. They want the gullies to be cleansed. So we've got to sort of, and Councillor Ashton mentioned the sort of do it once mentality. We don't want to be going back to the same site 2 or 3 times. So we need to find a more effective way of ensuring that the gullies are accessible when you go. So I just wondered, have you taken those steps about contacting parishes and utilising other forms of getting their attention, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. We've tried numerous things. I would say it's not the largest issue that's facing us at the moment, but it is frustrating when there are regular complaints and when we try and attend that there's cars blocking them. It's a problem on cycle, which is effectively when we are trying to routinely cleanse assets. Whilst we put signs out and we do book road closures for sites, sometimes people don't adhere to that. So we are engaging where we've got problem areas where obviously we want to get them cleaned, but when there's actually flooding being caused or pooling in the road, so that non-attendance on one cycle is going to cause a real issue. That's where we're engaging directly, and we are trying to pull things more offline and do a reactive plan, well, a planned reactive, if you would, job, rather than just rely on keep going back on cycle. And that will be where we'll take the opportunity to, whilst we're there, jet through all the lines and make sure through to outfall everything is working, rather than just cleaning the pots out when we've got people to move their cars. And that is proving to be, whilst slightly more complicated and a bit more work involved in the front end, it will work better longer term.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, thank you for the report. It's nice to get the detail. Acacia Avenue's on there, which I'm delighted with. I think I've reported that every quarter since I was elected about 3 years ago. So it's fantastic to see it on there, because it really is a problem for the local area there. I know that you're saying this is within year 24-25. Do you have any exact sort of dates that this will be looked at? I don't mean now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's just if residents are going to ask if the next rainfall, I know I'll have people on the phone. It'd be nice for me to be able to give them some sort of clarity if at all possible, but just delighted to see it on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head sat here right now. However, the system that I've reported that out of is something we've been building across all of highways for all of our schemes. Effectively, we're trying to build a 3-year list of schemes for all workflows, and that will include these drainage ones. When a job, a specific task order to our contractors is raised and linked to that scheme brief, it does pull through the exact date. So in the background, I will be able to tell you. So I'll take that away outside the meeting and come to you and discuss what the current time frame is looking like for actual delivery. And that's something, again, I would say that through local highways managers, they have access to this system, so they can give a bit more detail that's behind the scenes than I've provided in this report.
Okay, Councillor Gibson again.
Would you suggest that all members, local members, obviously that are not on highways, to go to their highway manager, ask them for the dates so they can do the same in their own specific wards, or filter that through us? What would you like?
I'd absolutely recommend that all county councillors do speak to their local highways managers, or Kyra Nettle, who's the county highways manager, or me, if there's a question, filtering up the chain if you're not getting what you need. But we've tried to build this system so all that information is in one place. So the local highways managers themselves have got access to the various teams across the council that are doing schemes. So they've got at the touch of a button an update. So that is the best route to go through, and they'll have the detail.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks for the report, Richard. It's good to get updated on this. The question I've got is, a little while ago, we were asking parish councils and local groups to point out drainage assets that possibly we didn't know about, so we could map things more accurately. And I just wondered how successful that initiative's been. Did we get a lot of feedback from parishes, etc.? I just wondered if we could have an update on that, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Brooke. That engagement piece did happen. I think it would probably be safe to say we didn't maybe get as much back as we thought we would, given how on parish ward walks with members there's a lot of information that's out there. So I'd suggest going forward that probably a more direct approach is the best way to get that. Everything we've filtered into the system, we're mapping it all. And I wouldn't ever claim that our asset inventory is 100% correct. It's been pulled together from paper reports for over the last 50 years, and there's bits that that's bits that are missing. There's some assets on there that aren't ours that have been recorded, so we're constantly refining that. And Nathan Whitfield in Technical Services Partnership is doing a lot of work on getting that asset inventory 100%. There's some work going on through the Floods and Water team and various emergency response off the back of the flooding, where there's an opportunity and a desire to engage closer with, some parishes are setting up their own flood wardens, and I think that's a really useful endeavour to go through local members and make sure we've got some slightly more direct links, especially with those parishes where there genuinely is regular flooding issues, and you know, there's properties that are flooded. We can work together closer there. Short answer is we've taken what we got and we've added that in, but it varied a lot.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Just following up on comments there from Councillor Vernon, what powers do we have around road closures or the suspension of parking when it comes to supporting our gully cleaning programme? I say this, I'm sure I've mentioned it before. I don't feel that it is particularly draconian to ticket and tow where someone is blocking our teams doing their maintenance on gullies and drains. It may seem a little bit harsh, but it's nowhere near as harsh as on the neighbours should the water flow in the front door and out the back door, because we haven't been able to do the job that we need to do.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. If we book a temporary traffic regulation order to close the road or prohibit parking for that time, then we are perfectly entitled for the road space, and people are not entitled to park there. We have just, and we've done some work with comms and with our legal services team, we have started to tow vehicles on our surfacing schemes now. As although this is a priority, obviously, we can't get in when we've planned to resurface a road. We're losing hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of time, as opposed to maybe thousands of pounds worth of time if it's a gully cleaning one. So that has been the priority, but we've managed to sort of establish the framework and procedure to be able to do that, and our contractors have towing companies on call now at short notice. So we do have the opportunity going forward to, as long as we've booked that closure in advance, to actually tow vehicles that are prohibiting us doing that vital work.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, Councillor Brooks actually covered what I was going to ask, but the programme of actually getting in touch with parish councils, was that sort of uniform over our area, or because certainly the parish council that I'm on had no knowledge of it at all? But a lot of concerns, because we had a huge amount of what I would imagine are riparian drains at the edges of roads that were almost overtopping. I mean, was it actually done to every parish council? I'm sort of harp on it. It seems like Groundhog Day with these riparian things, but it does seem quite relevant, because if a drain is cleared out, it holds a whole lot more water than one that's actually appears to be growing a crop. So if you have any information, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take that away. Tom, your team did the engagement, and I believe it was through LALC, so it was every parish that was engaged with, but whether that communication's failed through to specific parishes, if you let me know the specifics, we'll take it away and make sure that's gone out. I think I do agree with you, though, direct engagement with parishes, that we're still in a world where there's a really difficult conversation with riparian landowners who have responsibility for either ditches in front of their property or piped culverts in front of their property they might not even know are there. There's genuine shock when they are informed they're the ones that should have been maintaining that. And whilst there's always work to do with our own programmes of cyclic work, and there's a perfectly functioning gully that runs into a ditch that is full up of vegetation and growing crops in it is not going to work very well anyway. So we need to do everything that we do in partnership with all of the relevant authorities involved in the way that water gets away from, through ordinary water courses with riparian landowners, IDBs, and then into main water courses as well, which the maintenance of those also has an effect on how the whole system will work.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for the report, Richard. I welcome the cleansing record for obvious reasons that we've been through over and over again. When a vehicle has a photograph, when the contractor takes a picture of a car over a gully, is there any information put on the car that, you know, contractors have been to cleanse the gully but unable to do that, so can you please not park here out like that? The other question is on the temporary road closures, and I raised this before, and this goes throughout the authority, whether it's street lighting or whatever, is there any conversation with the city, you know, where I live, with the City of Lincoln Council, because we ain't got parishes, that work is going to be carried out on that road, it's going to be closed. If you want to come and clean it, you know, sweep it or do anything else, you know, it'll be a good opportunity on a certain period to come down then.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. To answer your first question, not routinely on every visit, but where we've known that they've been and had an issue and it's a recurring problem, we have left letters under windscreen wipers to inform them. So there is a conversation about whether just on every routine cleanse there could be leaflets left, but previously we've been doing that slightly more reactively than proactively. To answer your second question, whenever we do book a road closure, the city is a statutory consultee, so they are informed. However, we are starting to try and work more proactively with other bodies, district, town, city councils, on various activities where we're going to be closing roads. An example is when we cut the grass, we do try and inform, so litter picking can take place at the same time. And when we've got road closures like this, it will, I mean, if I'm being honest, we're trying to make sure that we're doing all of our own activities at the same time under one road closure, because that hasn't always been perfect in the past. And the system that I referred to that's showing you what schemes are coming up is something that we share internally to give those opportunities to understand. There's a little tag on them actually that says collaborative working possible ? Now, where officers are indicating that when they put their scheme in, and that will flag up to other people that will have schemes in the area that they can use the same closures. But to answer your question, they will know about it, but I think there's more we can do jointly to make sure that we push that message to give others the opportunity to use what's booked. We'd like to think vice versa as well.
Finally, on the work to be undertaken, there's no work to be undertaken within Lincoln itself. So do I take it all the pipes and all the gullies are working perfectly?
No, don't take it that all of the gullies and pipes are working perfectly. Ultimately, as I went through the various considerations to prioritise which schemes come first, it will be that within the remit of what we've got as a highways authority that needs repairing to aid with any issues, they haven't come at the top of the list for this year, but we've got further information for subsequent years that we're building up with the assumed budget each year. So I'll provide you with a list of 25, 26 and 26, 27 schemes as well, although that is not fully populated at the moment, and these lists can move around as the risk profile changes or there's been subsequent flooding events. And also, as was mentioned, riparian or main river or Anglian water, for example, system issues can change where places flood, and that changes the priority of what we're reacting to as well. So if you'll excuse the terminology, it is a very fluid situation which we're trying to get as rigid as possible.
Okay, thank you for questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I move that the committee endorse the report and that our satisfaction be recorded in relation to the detailed information and assurances provided, and that our recommendations and suggestions in relation to partnership working and interdepartmental collaborations as captured be cascaded across relevant leading officers and teams. I ask that all comments and suggestions raised by this committee be shared with the executive member for their information. Does anyone dissent? If so, please indicate now. No, thank you, that is agreed. Moving on to the final item of the agenda, the committee work programme. This item is on pages 81 to 86 of the agenda pack. This item enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme. The report will be presented by Chiara, our scrutiny officer, and our actions are to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. So over to you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to confirm that since the publication of this agenda pack, there haven't been any changes made to the work programme. So you can see the work programme as it has been developed currently between pages 82 and 85 of this agenda pack. If there's any other items that you would like to see included in future months, any topics in specific that you would like us to communicate with leading officers around, please do contact me directly offline, or you can raise these matters now. Equally, officers, please be reminded that we're always open for any items that you are aware are going to be coming into scrutiny in the next few coming months. So that concludes my update to you, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers? Seeing none, I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as detailed in pages 81 to 86. Does anyone dissent? If so, please indicate now. Seeing none, no, thank you, that is agreed. And that is now concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you everyone for your attendance. Thank you.